Hey Internet. So any of you who regularly watch my channel will know that I really like this game, Arcanum, of Steamworks and Magick Obscura. You can also tune in and watch me play it from time to time. It's a game that really kind of captured my imagination as a kid and sort of, I don't know, I would say kind of began my love of steampunk and an ongoing fascination with technology and building and crafting, and it also has a really cool magic system in my opinion. And while you can watch me go through all these in the playthrough I'm doing, I want to spend a bit of time explaining some things about the game, about its world, about its characters, things you might see when I'm playing, but you might want to just a little bit of a deeper dive on. So welcome to my showcase video on Arcanum of Steamworks and Magick Obscura. If you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you hit like, and if you really like it, hit subscribe. Also, it'd really help me out if you head over to the Patreon and sign up. If you got a couple bucks in your pocket. If not, don't worry about it. I appreciate you showing up and watching. Alright, let's get into it. Now, Arcanum was the creation of a company called Troika Games. Troika was founded by Leonard Boyarsky, Tim Kaine, and Jason Anderson. Names a lot of you know from the original Fallout games. These guys had worked over at Interplay, and when they left, they went on to do their own thing. Now, 1998 was a long time ago, and Troika's first game came out in 2001, and that game was Arcanum of Steamworks and Magick Obscura. It wasn't their only game, though. They produced two others. One, known as the Temple of Elemental Evil, that came out in about 2003, and some of you may have played it. And then, in 2004, they created the legendary Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. The original, not the new one. Of these games, the two most famous went on to be Vampire and Arcanum. But the Temple of Elemental Evil holds a special place in the hearts of those who played it way back when. Now, I never got a chance to play Vampire the Masquerade, but I do know it's based on a tabletop game of the same name by White Wolf Publishing, I believe. I know the lore gets really deep, and maybe one day I'll do a bit of a dive on it myself. I don't know. We'll see. I do love me some vampires. Anyway, Arcanum was built on a proprietary engine that they created. Now, looking at the game, you're going to see a lot of the old Fallout games, Fallout 1 and 2, in this new engine. I don't really know enough to go deeply into the differences between the two engines, but I feel like Arcanum's engine is a little more streamlined towards character creation and development. I like the way skills are laid out, and I really like the crafting and magic systems. If you want to know more, head over to Tim Kaine's YouTube channel. I'll post the link in the description here. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the game and the story itself. Now, once you pass character creation, which I will get into in a minute, you're shown this really cool cutscene. Now, obviously, this was made back in 2001, so the cinematic quality is not great. Nonetheless, it kind of immediately puts you into the world, shows you what things are all about. This amazing cinematic of a blimp flying through the air, passengers unaware of any trouble, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a squadron of planes come flying in on the tail, orcs gripping the controls, ready to fire. It kind of puts you right into the action, which is kind of where you want to be. It's a really good way to open a game, and I'm quite fond of it. And it, again, kind of tells you everything you need to know about the world you're about to enter. Now, the setting of Arcanum is obviously a sort of steampunk world. The world of Arcanum. You kind of come to in the wreckage of this giant zeppelin that you were flying in. And without even having time to think, you're approached by a figure. Again, we'll talk about the characters in a minute. After chatting with this person, you kind of get an idea of who you are and how you fit into this world. Again, a lot of really good, quick world building is done here. You find out you're the subject of some kind of prophecy. This crash was foretold, and well, that's kind of the beginning of your adventure. Now, if you open up your map, you'll see that you're in a tiny little area, this crash site where the blimp crashed. There's not much here, although it is worth exploring. And then, if you open up your world map, you'll see that there's a massive space to explore. Even for an early game, this place gives you a lot to do and a lot to see. Right now, you're sort of confined to the area you're at, and all you can do is sort of just move yourself forward, level up a bit, do the story bits and quests that are around you, but soon you'll make it to your first town, that's Shrouded Hills. Tiny little town in the middle of nowhere. Right now, you're along the banks of a river near a mountain range called the Stonewall Range. This is where the crash site and the town of Shrouded Hills reside. Eventually, you'll make it to Tarrant, a big city further up across the plains. You kind of have to get there manually after defeating some enemies in Shrouded Hills, but the trip's worth it, even if you are waylaid by enemies. Finally, you're in the big city, and there's so much to do. Quests to complete, new NPCs to find, companions to meet. This is sort of the genius of this game. You start small, but it doesn't take long for you to really get into the exploring and get into some really big stuff. And along the way, you'll have learned some crafting recipes, or some magic if that's the way you want to play. Now, besides regular map travel, you can also use the trains to get around, which I'll discuss again in detail a little later. But the map, once you really start exploring, is massive. There's the mainland here where there's millions of points of interest. Well, not millions, but a lot of points of interest. And then there's a little Thanatos Isle down to the south with a few places to explore. The Vertigroth Wastes to the east, the vast Glimmering Forest to the northwest, the Morbihan Plains, the Isle of Despair. All these places are full of places that you can explore. Like I said, the cities are really interesting. There's Tarrant, which is kind of your main city for a lot of your questing. Later on, you'll make your way to Blackroot, back across the river. It's a small port town where you can access the sea. Despite its size, there's still a lot to do here, and a lot to see. There are towns like Ashbury, accessible by both sea and rail, Stillwater, further closer up to the mountains, and a bunch of tiny little places like Voradin. In addition to these sort of big set-piece cities and towns, you'll come across all kinds of tiny little places you can see. Altars and caves and dungeons and places where the crazy quests lead you to grab an artifact or kill a monster or deal with an NPC or some bandits. As you quest along, you'll really get an idea of what Arcanum really is, what this place feels like, its character. Obviously, it's incredibly steampunk, but the proliferation of magic and technology are kind of unique in this setting. The first quest line you're introduced to is your own, the Elven Prophecy. See, you're the reincarnation, apparently, of an ancient elven hero, and, well, you don't really know what to do with that yet, but you'll find out. But as you explore places and talk to people, you'll get given all kinds of quests, from ones that have you trekking across the vast wastes between the mountains and the forests, to ones that have you exploring the sewers in one city or another. You might join gangs, you might help a criminal syndicate, you might help the local guard retrieve some stolen objects. You can kind of do it all, although your alignment meter and the way you set up your character will determine which NPCs are willing to talk to you and which really don't want to have anything to do with you. Now, you, as a character, as I've discussed, are the reincarnation of this ancient elven hero, and you've got to find your way across the world and let this prophecy unfold however it's going to. You can choose to be good, you can choose to be evil, and the choices you make in the world really affect things. You can gain the blessings of one character or another that help you along your journey, or get cursed and have a much more difficult time of it. You might want to buy yourself some nice clothes so that some of the characters are more likely to talk to you, although you'll want to switch those out for armor when you get into the rougher parts of town or the wilderness. The way your choices alter the world you inhabit makes for a really compelling experience, as any veteran gamers will know. And of course, there's all the friends and enemies you're going to meet along the way. Your first friend, potentially, most likely, is Virgil. Virgil meets you at the crash site, tells you about Nasruddin's prophecy, and kind of ushers you into the world. He'll join your party and fight alongside you, and heal you when you need it. But he's not the only one you can recruit. Right away in Shrouded Hills, you'll run into some others. Sod Meadmug is a half-ogre who, depending on your choices and your character, might join you if you want. Now, you can only have a limited number of people join your party, but you can increase that number, and there are a couple of glitches that get around that. Magnus Shalefist, the dwarf in Tarrant, can join you if you give the right speech choices. He's a good fighter, and he can help repair your stuff as well. All these choices and options are great, but my favorite companion is a little more tough to find, and you're kind of on a timer. If you go to Ashbury at the right time and go to just the right place, you'll find some trouble. A group of local folks being, I'm going to say, less than kind to a local animal called the Worthless Mutt, unfortunately. This dog is having a bad time, but if you pay them off, they'll stop, and the dog will join you, and you really want this guy with you. Capable of tearing enemies to bits in seconds. He's really handy to have around, and he sticks with you pretty much the whole game, if you want him there. Also, he tends to ignore the companion limit, so handy to have around. Knowing these little tricks can help make your gameplay experience a little more fun and a lot more interesting. The characters in this world are really dynamic, and there's kind of a lot to explore with them. They have their own quests, their own needs, their own desires, like companions in pretty much any good game, and their presence, their knowledge, and their skills will really help you navigate the world. And there's a lot of world to navigate. Lots of enemies to fight, all kinds. The first you'll encounter are wild animals. Wolves mostly, boars. You'll come across kites, which are small creatures that can fight and use magic. Eventually you'll encounter bandits and ghosts and skeletons and creatures of all kinds that will threaten you. It's worth having some good friends by your side. And eventually you'll be fighting mages and elementals and beings no mortal was ever meant to face. This is, after all, a world inhabited by magic, and the beings animated by that magic can be both friend and enemy. A lot of them are enemy. Either way, the game's interactions and amazing places make for a really great story to explore. But a great story is only part of the experience. Let's talk about some of the game mechanics. The start of the character creation is pretty simple. The first screen is just your general profile. You can select your gender, you can select your race, you can select a background for your character, which is really cool. And the background will not only adjust some of your stats and give you some bonuses, you might get extra items out of some of them, you might gain aptitude in one set of characteristics or another as well. Each combination of race and gender has 4 portraits you can choose from. The races available are sort of your standard fantasy races. So you got humans, dwarfs, elves, half-elves, gnomes, halflings, half-orcs, and half-ogres. And as far as backgrounds, there's a huge list to choose from. Now, the different races give you different abilities, stat bonuses, aptitudes, that sort of thing. They also often affect how you're going to be perceived in the game. So, for instance, a dwarf might look unkindly on another elf coming up to them and speaking to them, until you get the right dialogue options to make them more friendly towards you. Half-ogres are always considered to be quite stupid by others, and their conversation options reflect this. You might miss out on some key information depending, but then again you might gain some more information depending on who you're talking to and about what. Common tropes pervade. Elves are highly magical, and so if you choose to be an elf, you'll gain higher magical aptitude. If you're a dwarf, you'll have a better chance of using technical skills in crafting. And if you're an ogre or a half ogre, you're really strong. Once you've chosen all that, it's time to pick a name and then it's on to the next screen. Now, Arcanum doesn't use a class system. You start off with points and you can kind of put them wherever you want, although some skills and disciplines might clash with others. You'll have to do some testing. When you first begin, you start with only 5 points to spend. Now, you can throw those points into your stats if you want, your health, your constitution, your dexterity, or up your health or up your fatigue level if you wish. Those can make for a good start, but if you look over a little bit, you'll have 3 buttons that you can choose from: skills, technological disciplines, and spell colleges. Now, your skills give you a bunch of different things, so you can put points into your proficiency with bows, with dodging, with melee fighting, with throwing. You can backstab, pickpocket, prowl, spot trap, gamble, haggle, heal, persuasion, all things that'll help you in dialogue checks, whether with merchants or with other NPCs. Or you can put points into repairing firearms, pick locks, and disarm. These are your technical aptitudes, and these are what you'll get points in if you choose to go with a dwarf. The tech disciplines allow you to choose things that you can craft. You'll have access to these schematics throughout your game. I'll talk a bit more about the crafting system in a second. And the spell schools give you access to all the various magical colleges, and there are many. There are elemental magics like fire, earth, water, and air. There are 2 necromantic schools, light and dark. There's force. There's spatial, there's nature, metamagic, spells that let you affect other magic in the world. You can choose the morph school, which will give you access to spells that transform you or your companions. You can increase your armor, harden your strength, or turn your enemies into sheep. There's a lot of different spells to choose from and a lot of schools to specialize in. It would be wise to do a little research, and if you're going to make a mage character, kind of figure out where you want to go with it. The last screen in character creation takes you to a sort of random shop where you can purchase a few items to start off your journey. You usually start with about 400 gold, but your background can actually change how much money you start with. Make your choices wisely. It'll be a little bit before you get any new equipment. Now, as I said earlier, this game comes from the makers of the original 2 Fallouts, and you can really see a lot of that in the UI. But also, it's incredibly thematic. One of those things that just really puts you right into the world, and I kind of really like that about this game. Something you don't see a lot as much with sort of more modern minimalist UIs or tactical combat UIs, that sort of thing. Extremely well designed in my opinion, and I still look to it as an example of really good UI design, even though it's got some flaws. It has a lot of elements that you see in games of the time. It's also got your now standard action bar of 1 to 10, where you can put skills, items, spells, something that's still in use in most game design today. Putting points into skills increases your checks with those skills. So for instance, putting points into pick locks increases your lockpick checks, and the higher you get, the more bonuses you get, and a couple of other things as well. Some of the skills also increase your use of items. So for instance, if you want to make guns and use them, putting points into the firearm skill is a no-brainer. There's another system though as well, which lets you train your skills even more than just by putting points into them. You can apprentice at various NPCs who will give you higher training in your chosen discipline. The craft system is really simple. Every item takes 2 items to craft, and usually each of those items takes 2 items to craft. Some items aren't craftable, you can find them, such as soap or metal plates, which you can find in trash bins around the world and use to make all sorts of things. Sometimes you need to have enough skill in one discipline to craft certain items in another, which brings me to found schematics. See, when you train to put skills into various schematics, those are your learned schematics. Found schematics are ones that you can find in the world by buying them or looting them from enemies or chests. These can be learned, and you can later use them often to craft things that aren't normally available in your crafting menu just from training alone. Arguably, a magic playthrough is a lot more simple. You'll probably need a few basic points put into your skills, but you can put a lot more points into your magic spells, and those give you a lot of utility, from unlocking doors and chests to outright killing your opponents in a single hit, if you know what you're doing. Magic in Arcanum is a shortcut, in my opinion, a really fun one, and one you should experiment with if you're going to play. Now, Arcanum introduces a really interesting mechanic, the magic tech meter. This is a meter in your character sheet that will show where you are on the spectrum of magic to technology. See, in Arcanum, you can't really be both. You can always have a little bit of magic and a little bit of tech combined, but for the most part, once you start getting up in levels, you kind of have to choose. If your magic level is too high on the magic meter, tech will start to fail around you. Likewise, if you're really techy, you won't really get much use out of magic. Spells will fail, and sometimes critically, causing you damage. Less complex magic and tech can kind of get around this, but once things start getting more complex and stronger, failures start to be more noticeable. So be very careful what you have with you, what you're using, and how you're aligned on the magic tech meter. Now, Arcanum does have a weight and encumbrance system, which, I'm not generally a fan of, but it's not too bad here. It also has a durability system, which, honestly, with weight versus durability, I could do with one or the other. Not a huge fan of both, but it's fine. Inventory gets easily disorganized, and sometimes you have to reorganize it, which is important. And it's important to make sure you have places where you can sell stuff, and sell stuff often, so you don't get encumbered and can't run, or your inventory is too full of important stuff and you can't pick up really good loot. That said, you can always have your companions hold things for you. Well, most of them anyway. I don't think the dog really has a backpack, honestly. The game incorporates a day and night system, which really matters because some shops will be closed at night and open during the day, and others might only be accessible at night when you want to do some underhanded things. Certain things only take place at certain times of the day, and sometimes you have to be careful that you don't miss an event. Otherwise, you'll never see it again. Luckily, the game does have a sleep/wait mechanic where you can set a time to wait. That way, you're not just hanging around the game doing busy work until daytime comes. That's something you see in a lot of modern games too, and it's a really handy feature. With access to your companions' inventories, you can equip them with better gear as well. You can turn Virgil from a robed, stick-wielding monk into a hardened knight wielding a massive sword, if you want. The top-down isometric view is cozy, in my opinion, something reminiscent of a lot of games at the time, and something that's actually kind of making a little bit of a resurgence in certain indie games, which I like. The combat system's interesting. It is technically turn-based, and you can turn the turn-based combat on and off at any point. If you turn it off, things go a little more real time. If you turn it on, everyone has to kind of wait their turn. It's easier if you have a large fight and you gotta plan things out, especially if you, like me, are sometimes slow on the controls. Now, the game's travel system's pretty self-explanatory. When you get to the edge of a map, the icon in your UI changes and you can select the world map and travel to any marked locations. This can be a bit of a rigid system though, and while that is true, you can also discover locations completely organically by walking there. It takes some time, but you can cross the map on your own if you want. Now, if you're using the map travel, especially for long journeys, you might get waylaid a few times by enemies. These encounters aren't usually too hard, but they can scale up a little bit, so be careful. Of course, there is one other way to get around. Trains and boats. These are stationary objects that will take you to various cities and places along your route. You'll want to use them from time to time when you're questing. Exploring's fun, but you don't want to miss dynamic events that only occur once. And these are quick travel from one place to another. When it comes to playing the game, there's a million different ways to play it. If you want to go tech, you can buy all your resources from high-end merchants if you want, or you can go scavenging in scrap heaps and garbage bins. These refill and you'll find items that you can use to craft other items. It's a handy little tip. There are a few things that when you start off, it's handy to always put points into, no matter what discipline you're going into. For instance, it's always handy to be able to make healing salves. These are low-level tech items that you can use to heal yourself very quickly. I also suggest investing at least a point into being able to create Molotov cocktails, another low-tech item that's always handy. And you can craft them from simple scrap. They're handy even if you're primarily a magic character. Run out of mana? Chuck a few Molotovs at your enemies. They won't be expecting it. And of course, if you're a tech character, it might be worth throwing a few points into some cantrip spells, giving you the ability to increase your armor class or hit harder, depending on what your chosen method of play is. That first visit to the store after you create your character is really important. You want to make sure that you select the right gear for your character. There's some rudimentary items you can get. You can get a gun, you can get a throwing weapon, a melee weapon, some armor. You kind of want to make sure you maximize your value there, otherwise you'll kind of struggle to make headway. Although it's never that hard to level up. If you're going as a tech character, spoilers, it's going to be worth learning to make the looking glass rifle. Probably one of the most powerful weapons in the game. It hits hard and fast, and if you know how to use it and have the skills to maximize your firearms, you'll be taking down enemies really easy in no time. If you're going magic, you'll want some spells that do harm, sure, but you'll want some other spells that let you move around the world and minimize your damage, as well as heal. I know I said magic's a little more easy to play, but it can get a little more complex with all the spells that you need to remember and kind of remembering how they all fit together and work. It does take some time to craft a good build in this game. Then again, you can just be a heavy warrior, buy some swords and hit guys with them. That might actually be the least complex way of playing this game, but in my opinion, it's the least fun. There's a couple glitches you can take advantage of in the game as well. I don't know if they've been patched in the preserved releases, but there's a graveyard, I believe in Ashford, that you can basically have unlimited zombies coming at you, and if you can kill them quickly, you can level real fast. There's also a quest where you move a rock for a farmer, and he'll pay you a good amount of money for the work, and when the work's done, he'll keep paying you money if you keep asking. I won't tell you where these are or how to activate them. They're not always active and you have to meet the right criteria, but do a bit of Googling and you can figure it out. Like I said, there's a million ways to play this game and all kinds of things to do. It's really interesting. And I've played this game for years and I still haven't discovered or done everything. If you like the gameplay, I really suggest diving into it. It's really fun and there's a lot to learn, a lot to see, and a lot to do. I'm really extolling the virtues of this game and I can't do it enough. But I gotta say, there are some things that I'm not too fond of. Those of you who watched my playthrough, like in the description, know that I find some of the controls a little bit clunky and difficult to remember. Though this was a long time ago, and game design's kind of moved on from some of that, so it's hardly the game's fault necessarily. Clearly an earnest attempt on the part of the developers to create something that was easy to use. There are some limitations I'm not entirely fond of when it comes to travel, though I have to say, for a game of its time, while this can't be called an open world game necessarily, to a certain degree, it could be said to have an open world in a lot of ways. Not the way you'd use the term to describe an open world in a modern game, of course. And I think my biggest complaint at the time was that the multiplayer never worked. At least, it never worked properly. Especially frustrating considering the button was right there. It was really tantalizing. Either way, I used to play this game for hours and hours and hours, choosing different character setups, trying different things, and playing different ways. I think I only got near the end game once or twice, and I think I only beat it once. Either way, I had fun the whole time. And as I mentioned earlier, this game influenced me in a lot of ways. My love of steampunk, it sort of changed the way I view exploring in games. And the character creation and character management in the game is something I still hold on to when I'm looking at other games and how they function. I don't like classes because of this game, because I've seen what you can do when you have more choice in the way your character functions. And I'd really like to see this game make a comeback in some form, if possible. That's something that might be coming up, and I'll talk about that in a second. But before I do, I'm just going to share with you guys what my favorite builds are. Now, if you've been watching my playthrough, again, link in the description, you'll know that I favor tech characters. My favorite way to play is a technological gun character. It's a very strong character, especially at the end game, and very versatile. I can do a lot with a character that can make guns, bullets, lockpicks, and everything I need, and do lots of damage at long range, especially if I've got my little dog helper. And I'm not afraid to admit, back in the day, I was, and still am, really into playing dwarves. That said, whatever your chosen build, whatever your chosen character, I think you'll have a lot of fun in Arcanum. It's worth checking out, and you can play it again and again, each time a little different, if that's your thing. Well, that's all I'm giving you guys for today. I don't want to spoil anything if you really want to play it. And if you do, Arcanum is available on Good Old Games. It doesn't cost too much, under $10, and it's worth a pickup. You guys know that I'm big on game preservation, and Good Old Games is an amazing source for old games that it's hard to find anywhere else. I couldn't have done this video and this series without their preservation efforts. Not just taking old games and reselling them, but updating them so they can run on modern systems. It's great work. There are a few projects in the last decade or two that have been trying to recreate Arcanum from a fan-based perspective. Project Open Arcanum, for one. Now, I don't advise you go to their website right now because it seems to mostly be malware, but you can find references to them on various forums and other sites, and I don't know if they're still active, but it might be worth looking into to see if they're working. It seems like they might be, which gives me some hope. And of course, for further information, check out Tim Kane's YouTube channel. I'll post a link in the description. He talks a lot about the development of the game and plans they had going forward. There was going to be a sequel that got canceled, and he'll tell you a bit about that too. So head on over and tell him I sent you if you want. That's just a little bit of a dive into Arcanum of Steamworks and Magick Obscura. If this video has interested you in any way, you can watch me do some playthroughs on the channel here. I'll post some links in the description, and maybe one or two will pop up on screen at the end here. I don't know. We'll see. Either way, it's a fascinating game. I really enjoy it, and I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to me talk about it. So I want to thank you all for watching. I appreciate every one of you who shows up and just pops in and hangs out with me for a little bit. As always, hit like and subscribe if you liked it. And just got to plug my Patreon once more. You know, I post videos on there that I don't put on the channel. One or two little freebies on there for now. I intend to add some more soon. And there's also Discord access too. So, you know, if you feel like chatting with me in a more personal way, head on over and sign up. I'd appreciate it, and it would really help me out. And if you can't or don't want to, no problem. I just appreciate you being here. And remember, magic and explosives don't mix. All right. Bye, Internet.